city appreciates your interest and participation in the public hearing process. The Planning Commission serves as an advisory board to the City Council on land use and zoning matters. The hearing agenda items consist of development applications that require public hearings. The Planning Commission considers the item and makes a recommendation for approval or denial to City Council. The City Council will make the final decision for or against approval of the application. The agenda consists of the roll call, an administrative report by staff, public comment for non-agendized items, approval of minutes from the previous hearing, continuances for items that will not be heard tonight, withdrawals for items that have been withdrawn for any further consideration, consent agenda for items not likely to require a presentation or discussion. All items on the consent agenda may be voted on together. Any commissioner may move any item from the consent agenda to the regular agenda. A regular agenda is where each item includes a presentation and recommendation by staff, a presentation by the applicant, and public comments. The applicant will then have an opportunity to respond to the public comments. The Planning Commission will deliberate on the case and cast their votes. And lastly, non-action items are for discussion only items. No vote will be cast by the Planning Commission. Citizens wishing to speak on any agenda item will need to fill out a blue speaker card, or if not willing to speak, may fill out a yellow comment card and turn it in at the staff table before the agenda item is to be discussed. The chair will call your name when it's your turn to speak. When called, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and then begin speaking. Groups wishing to speak should elect a spokesperson to represent the views of the group. To facilitate the meeting, your comment will be limited to 3 minutes for individual speakers. 1 additional minute for each additional individual who is present at the hearing and has contributed their time to the representative speaker, up to a maximum of 10 minutes. Please format your speech to fit within the allotted time. A light system is installed on the podium for timing presentations. The light will be green for 2 minutes, yellow for 1, and red when your time is up. Please conclude your comments when the red light appears. Thank you for your interest and time. Now we will begin the hearing with a roll call.
Chair Scarborough.
Here.
Vice Chair Young.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Present.
Commissioner Ertel.
Here.
Commissioner Joyner.
Here.
Commissioner Drake.
Here.
Commissioner Reed.
Here.
All here.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any public comment for non-agendized items? I don't see any. None. Perfect. Then we will move on to the administrative report by Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Nothing new with regard to tonight's agenda for you, and I wanted to remind you that we will be meeting on October 22nd, if you can make it, as well as November 12th. Those are our next 2 meetings. And again, we only have 1 meeting in November and 1 meeting in December. So that's the only update I have for you right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. Next on our list here is the minutes. We have September 24th, 2025 minutes. Do I have a motion?
Chair Scarborough, I'll move for approval of the September 24, 2025 regular meeting minutes as written.
Second.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Chair Scarborough.
Yes.
Vice Chair Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes.
Commissioner Ertel.
Yes.
Commissioner Joyner.
Yes.
Commissioner Drake.
Yes.
Commissioner Reed.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 1 item on consent agenda this evening. It is 5 TA 2024 Middle Housing Text Amendment. We do have a commissioner who would like staff to do a very brief presentation. We'll keep it on consent, and we'll see if we can have a vote or maybe 1 question or so, 2 questions afterwards.
Certainly, Chair, Scarborough, members of the Commission, pleasure to be in front of you this evening. I don't know if there's any specific questions before I begin, but I can just provide a full presentation here to be brief with it, but just go through the same items that we discussed 2 or 3 weeks ago when we were here last to introduce this item before the Commission. Again, this is the Middle Housing Text Amendment 5 TA 2024. Again, background on this is as a result, the efforts that we've been doing with our zoning ordinance are a result of House Bill 2721. This was passed by the state legislators and signed by the governor in 2024. But this particular bill had a longer timeline before it needed to be implemented, that timeline being January 1st, 2026. So unlike the other housing bills that were processed last year, those had a shorter timeline. This one was protracted, so we addressed this one a little later. But the city must comply with the state requirements no later by January 1st. Otherwise, middle housing would be allowed on every single-family property without any limitations. To again highlight those jurisdictions throughout the state, particularly Maricopa County, that are required to do this. Those are of a population of 75,000 or greater, highlighted on the screen. Of note, Scottsdale being the only jurisdiction in the northeast portion of Maricopa County that's required to implement this. So again, to speak about what is middle housing, and the term is being used quite a bit lately. It's kind of got some popularity recently because of the housing needs of the state and the country as a whole. But middle housing generally relates in contemporary terms to housing typology that contains multiple dwelling units in buildings that are generally of the same size and scale as a single-family home. Those densities, as a result, fall between a single-family home at 1 unit per lot and a larger multifamily apartment building, which are many units, obviously, per lot. The state, through the bill, House Bill 2721, defined middle housing as duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes that are generally, again, compatible to single-family homes in size and scale. They can be constructed in a number of different configurations, as you can see on the screen, on the right side of the screen. Multiple dwelling units attached together in one building, multiple dwelling units in detached configuration on the same lot, which is what's shown on the bottom right portion of the screen, and townhouse configurations. So again, they can be stacked in multiple units, stacked above each other, or located adjacent to each other, but in individual units from the ground to the sky. So what does this state law dictate that the city must do? Again, we have to allow duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes, collectively middle housing, on any single-family lot that is within 1 mile of the city's central business district. Now, that is subject to any other limitations, exclusions, one of which is the main one is the airport exclusion, but again, that has to be allowed within 1 mile of any central business district or downtown. We do not have a central business district. That was repealed last year. But we still have our downtown boundary. So that's essentially where this is going to apply for that component of the requirements. The other component is allowing middle housing on 20% of any new larger residential project. So if someone were to develop a property that was at least 10 acres in size, and they wanted multiple units, some of those units could be in a middle housing configuration, up to 20% of the area. What the city cannot do is discourage the development of this middle housing through any kind of requirements or actions that would make it impractical to build this type of housing. We cannot restrict middle housing to less than 2 floors, and we cannot restrict middle housing to an FAR, or floor area ratio, of less than 0.5. We can also not set restrictions or permitting review that are more restrictive than we would typically have for a single-family residential dwelling, and we cannot require owner occupancy of any of those structures or dwellings on that lot for the middle housing development. We also cannot require those middle housing units to comply with a commercial building code. This means that they will be reviewed under the IRC, or International Residential Code. And we cannot require more than 1 off-street parking space per unit. And I guess kind of critically to, and more importantly to the city of Scottsdale in particular, we cannot require fire sprinklers in any of those units that are classified as middle housing units. So as I discussed, there are some exclusions to where these new middle housing units can apply. The first and probably most impactful is areas in the vicinity of an airport. That is within the legislation, and we have 2 airports that would impact the applicability of this particular legislation, those being Sky Harbor and the Scottsdale Airport. Both of those have large areas that cover Scottsdale, and therefore would make the locating of the middle housing units unqualified to do that. Obviously, areas that are not incorporated in the city cannot be included. Areas that lack sufficient urban services, such as solid waste, streets, other things, would not be qualified. And areas that are not served by water and sewer services are also not qualified. And again, this has to be applied only in areas that are residentially zoned. So anything that's not residentially zoned cannot apply this. And just a note, HOAs can privately restrict through deed restrictions or otherwise the applicability of this type of units as well. That was not removed from the ability from HOAs from the bill. So what is the city proposing as a result of this? Again, we are going to establish some new definitions to relate to the duplex, triplex, and fourplex and other things associated with middle housing. We're also going to establish that middle housing as a land use within the residential zoning districts and establish qualifications in order to be able to locate and operate middle housing on specific properties throughout the city. We'll have a review procedure in order to make sure that those middle housing developments meet all the standards that we're outlining, and we're establishing those objective development standards for middle housing, such as maximum height, FAR, and so forth. So with regards to the qualifications, as I mentioned, there are exclusions, one of which is the airport, and we are implementing that airport exclusion at this time. We also are requiring that the property owner demonstrate sufficient urban services, including the ability for solid waste collection, transportation access, and availability and other critical services. We're also requiring them to demonstrate adequate water and sewer service to the site, including the capacity of any existing infrastructure at that time. We're also ensuring that the proposed development speaks with the utility providers and that the utility providers can provide the appropriate utilities, those being power, gas, typically. We're also requiring that the utilities be provided individually to each unit, and of course, there has to be within a residential zoning district. And we're going to make sure that all the zoning ordinance requirements are met, as I mentioned, density, FAR requirements, and so forth. So some of those requirements are listed on the screen here. I won't go through all of them, but you can see we're outlining the requirements for the development of these units and the parameters in which those new units must be built within. And importantly, they cannot exceed 2 stories in height or that FAR maximum of 0.5. Building height and setbacks will be per the underlying zoning district, and access, addressing, that all needs to be provided individually to each unit so they can ensure they have correct access to the units from the street. As with any text amendment that we make to the zoning code, we also use that opportunity to find any ability to increase the usability of the zoning ordinance. So we make a number of generally non-substantive changes and help clarify some things in order to make the document more user-friendly as anytime we open it up. So those include, with this particular application, definition changes to residential zoning districts to restructure how some of those requirements are placed to clarify and unify that structure. Minor change to the accessory building and structures language in order to clarify maximum coverage of accessory buildings in a rear yard. Some minor design changes to parking in order to meet the standards for off-street parking for middle housing, and any other little small typographical or grammatical changes that need to help usability. So timeline, as we can see on the screen here, we were with the Planning Commission on September 24th to introduce this, but following this hearing tonight, we are tentatively scheduled for November 17th with City Council for adoption of the proposed text amendment. And a reminder again, these provisions must be adopted by the city no later than January 1st, 2026 in order to avoid some issues with allowing this everywhere in the city otherwise. So that will conclude my presentation this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Carr, for a very thorough presentation. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? We'll go with Mr. Gonzalez first, Commissioner Gonzalez, then Commissioner Joyner.
Thank you very much. Mr. Carr, I've been asked, and this seems like a reasonable process, what if an HOA, or let's say a group of housing, didn't have a formal HOA as of January 1st of next year, they form an association and they go through a deed restriction at that time. Would they be able to eliminate this clause if they're within that area after the fact of the January 1st?
Chair Scarborough, Commissioner Gonzalez, I'm not admittedly that familiar with some of the HOA laws, and perhaps our counsel here is a little bit more, but from my understanding, There was some recent changes to state law that said that an HOA provision need to be in place, prior to this, in a later provision in order to enact any rules regarding that later provision. So I don't know if something was enacted by January 1st of 2026, if that would cover these middle housing things, which have already been put in place by the state. But I don't know, maybe the council has some different or some more opinion on that.
I apologize, Commissioner Gonzalez, if you could just repeat the question, make sure I'm...
I just wanted to see if a group of people could form after the January 1st of next year, if they could form an association or something to that effect, an HOA, and actually try to sidestep some of this ordinance.
So Commissioner Gonzalez, it's an interesting question. We haven't looked terribly closely at the HOA rules just because most of these new housing bills have sort of carved out that they don't affect, private arrangements, but conceptually, it seems like it's probably something that could be done, but it's hard for me to provide an opinion on it just because we haven't looked too closely at the HOA rules.
Very good. And then if you could, Mr. Cuff, if you could just basically, do you think that this is going to be impactful onto the commercial zoning within that district?
Chair Scarborough and Commissioner Gonzalez, probably not. Again, these provisions are related only to residential zoning districts. And so whether it be a single-family zoning district that's within 1 mile of Old Town or a new development of over 10 acres in size, the provisions only apply to residential zoning. So unlikely that there would be any major impact on the commercial zoning districts.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gonzalez. Mr. Curtis, I think it's safe to say we are on regular agenda now for this item. All right, Commissioner Joyner, please.
Thank you very much. I have a question about the fact that the owner-occupant does not have to occupy one of the units. Currently in Scottsdale, if a property is rented, they have to notify the surrounding neighbors around it. So my question is, if someone applied at the city to build these units, would the neighbors have to be notified that this was coming in? And if it was going to be rental, would the neighbors would our rental requirements apply to notification of existing residents?
Sure, thank you for the question, Chair Scarborough, Commissioner Joyner. So generally what the city's rules regarding the short-term lease of properties is, you are correct, yeah, there is a notification requirement for someone who's planning to rent whether it be a house or another unit, short-term, they have to notify adjacent property owners. That does not apply for someone who's doing a long-term rental. So the same standards would apply here. If someone were to do this with one of these middle housing units as a short-term rental, which they're not prohibited from doing, they would have to notify property owners and go through the same licensing process as any other short-term rental.
If the plans were submitted to the city in an existing subdivision, would the neighbors be notified?
They are not, Commissioner. There's no requirements that say that they have to be notified, and as a state is mandated per this bill, we cannot treat them differently from an application standpoint than any other single-family residence. So we don't notify generally people in subdivisions of an adjacent home that's being constructed when it's just a single family. So we would follow the same procedure here and not be notifying adjacent property owners of this type of development being constructed.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from any other commissioners? Commissioner Ertel, you're online. Do you have any questions?
I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, happy to entertain a motion.
Well, one of us needs to do this. Chair Scarborough, I make a motion for recommendation of approval to City Council for Case 5TA 2024 after finding that the proposed text amendment is consistent and conforms with the adopted general plan.
And I will second that.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Chair Scarborough,
Yes.
Vice Chair Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Reluctantly, yes.
Commissioner Ertel,
Positively, yes.
Commissioner Joyner,
Reluctantly, yes.
Commissioner Drake,
Reluctantly, yes.
Commissioner Reed.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, that's all we have on the agenda, so can we have a motion for adjournment? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So
Aye.
adjourned. Thank you.